Welcome to Pivot, a podcast hosted by Katie Day, where we find out how business owners have been pivoting their businesses to stay relevant and successful.
Hey guys, what's going on? Katie Day with the Movie to Texas team with Coldwell Banker here with another episode of the Pivot podcast. Today I'm joined by an avid triathlete, CrossFitter, coach, father, husband, Alex Vidal. What's going on? How are you today?
Hey, good. Hey, you've been following me on social media. You got my 4 pillars. I'm excited.
Yep. So Alex recently moved to Texas from Florida and joined Coldwell Banker as a vice president up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and has been, we were actually talking earlier today about how I feel like you've just added like massive value for the agents here in Texas. It's been really cool to watch. So I'm excited to kind of dig in and chat a little bit about everything that's gone on for you this year, because it's been a pretty eventful year for you.
You can say, I'm going to pay you, Katie, just to come around and introduce me places. That's great. What an intro.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's been quite a crazy year for you. So I guess maybe we'll take a little bit of a step back and kind of talk about, for people that don't know you or don't follow you on social media, right, who you are and kind of how you got into real estate and how you got to where you are today.
Well, you want to keep this at 10 minutes, so we'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So as you said, I'm Alex Vidal. I'm the RVP for Coldwell Banker here in Dallas. First time ever living in Texas, first time ever with Coldwell Banker. But I'm 42. I don't even think you know this, Katie. I got in the business when I was 19. I have a 23-year-old son, needed a job. And long story short, I had 2 opportunities. And one was to become the assistant to the president of the largest privately owned real estate company in Florida, a guy named Mike Pappas, or to go sell advertising at the Miami Herald, which was a job that my mom got me because she's been at the Herald for so long. And the only reason I took the job at Kai's, real estate was a company, was because it's a job I got on my own. And long story short, I went from being his assistant to becoming a telemarketer, calling brand new agents getting into the business, to the recruiting director for them, to the recruiting director for Prudential Real Estate in California, to the recruiting director for Prudential Real Estate in Florida, to sales coach, to then sales, to then becoming the recruiting director for Prudential in Colorado, to then coming back to run Florida for Prudential, to then doing sales again, running a privately owned brokerage that I took from 40-something agents to almost 600 with our team. And I know it's a long, winding road, but long story short, I've always felt, not always, but recently, I felt that I could run a company on a national level. And I know some people may look at that as something that's an ego thing, but it's my goal, right? But I want my brokerage, as much as I loved it, as much as I loved everything that we did there. We did some really cool things. It was my baby. It wasn't playing a role in my life of where I wanted to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And Coldwell Banker came knocking on my door with this opportunity to come run all of Dallas-Fort Worth. I wasn't looking, but I wasn't.
You never are.
I wasn't, but at the same time, it also hit at the right time, because I've been telling myself, Alex, you can run a company on a national level, but I wasn't doing anything about it either, because I was so happy. I mean, I was ecstatic where I was. And Katie, it taught me an important lesson, that just because you're happy where you're at doesn't mean that you can't be making changes. And so I'm here in DFW running Coldwell Banker in the marketplace, trying to help Charles out in Houston and Austin a little bit as well, with some big goals. So
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And I didn't know that you had moved around so much. So yeah. That's interesting. And always fun picking up and moving across the country.
Yeah, the first one to California, I was 20. So I got in when I was 19. I was like 22. And I'm very, you asked me, well, hey, do you want the questions? Well, like, dude, whatever, I'll talk about whatever. I went to California. The only reason I went to California, and I'm friends with all my bosses. Guy named Rich Cosner ran the largest Prudential franchise in California. He's now actually owns a very large Coldwell Banker franchise in Nashville. Okay. The only reason I went to California was because I was having issues with my 23-year-old's mother. And I said, you know what, a change of pace. I mean, I got married at 18, come on. And I'm like, a change of pace, different city, maybe it'll help our marriage. And it didn't. And a year later, I moved back. And Rich did not want me to move back. And Rich introduced me to Roger Herman, who ran the Prudential franchise for Florida. And then Roger's the guy that moved me to Colorado, and then Roger moved me back. So it's been an interesting road.
Yeah. Winding road.
Yeah, it's fun.
So yeah, I mean, I guess, I think it's obviously been a pretty crazy year, picking up and moving across the country. What would you say, through kind of everything that's gone on this year has been like the biggest positive that you've seen in 2020?
The biggest positive is that people are still being successful. The ones that didn't use COVID as an excuse, and I know this is I'm hesitant to say this because this is going to come across very insensitive with everything going on in the world. I think a lot of people use COVID as an excuse to get lazy and not do business. And I don't know if you're going to want to edit that out or not, but here's the reality. When you look at the top producers or the top entrepreneurs or the top people, they did not allow COVID to stop them. They just pivoted and found a way to continue working and not making it an excuse. And for me, that was a big lesson that no matter what's going on in the world, there are opportunities to be successful as long as you allow yourself to pivot and allow yourself to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, obviously being in real estate, a lot of the guests that we have on the podcast are in real estate, and it's definitely, everyone that I know, through Coldwell Banker and through our coaching, colleagues and things like that, like all had that very similar mindset, but also in other businesses. So we've interviewed people that, their restaurant was shut down or they weren't allowed to operate or whatever it may be, and they figured out what they could do to still, provide food and things like that. So.
Jim, a couple of my friends own gyms, same thing, right? They found a way to provide to their members even when the gyms were closed. I see it here. There's a monster church there's big churches in Texas, but this is a monster church right by our house. And in the parking lot at 6 a.m. on a freezing day, they got a group training boot camp Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays at 6 a.m. Like they just find a way,
Yeah. Well, and speaking of, we can kind of dig into fitness a little bit. What'd you do to work out today?
I squatted, and I don't typically squat because I herniated a disc in my back at the end of 19. I herniated a disc. So I said, I'm not going heavy anymore. I'm not going to do squats. I'll do stuff that just naturally move, whatever. And you know what? I went down to Miami for Thanksgiving, and my 15-year-old nephew told me he was squatting 305. And
so you're out here loading up the barbell now.
And he inspired me. So I threw some weight on the rack and I threw some heavy metal music on, and it was supposed to be my rest day, and I just squatted. That's it.
Yeah. That's funny. But I mean, I think you're super fortunate to have that gym at home. I know when, COVID hit and our gyms got shut down here, we, had some equipment, but it was, we didn't have a rig to be able to rack up, heavy weights. We didn't have a box to do box jumps. So it's definitely an interesting few months of creative programming.
We did that. So we bought our gym when we moved. I was like 2 miles from my office back in Florida, my actual physical office, even though I oversaw a bunch of offices. When we moved to the suburbs of Fort Lauderdale, all of a sudden CrossFit kind of came, time-wise, it just did not become available. You'd have to drive 15 minutes to the nearest CrossFit gym. You were an hour in the class and then 15 minutes back. It's an hour and a half of your morning that we just did not have. And with what we were spending a month, we said, you know what? With a little bit more money, we can deck out our garage. Why don't we just put an entire CrossFit gym in our garage? We're committed to fitness. We're not interested in being fit. We're committed to fitness, and we wanted to maintain that commitment. And so we just put the CrossFit gym in our garage. 3 years ago, COVID started, and all of a sudden, it worked out great. And then when people found out we were moving here, everybody's like, "So are you gonna sell your gym equipment because everything was sold out?"
Yeah.
Nope. And funny story. So you see in the pictures, I have that rig. So the rig didn't fit in our garage. So our handyman that installed the rig had to cut like an inch off the top for it to fit.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it did, because that would have been tragic.
Oh, I would have cut a hole in the ceiling and built like a box around it in the attic to make sure it fit if I really needed to.
I think that actually would have worked out though,
Probably would
have. Cool. So, I mean, obviously the title of the podcast is Pivot. We talked about it a little bit as far as businesses pivoting and things like that. And I think, in your role, at least from what I see, on the outside, is a lot of what you do is coaching, and things like that. So what would you say is something that I guess you've been, guiding the agents up there, or things that you've been, kind of, helping them out with?
Yeah, I do. I probably spend 80% of my time is spent with our existing agents, making sure that they continue to be raving fans of Coldwell Banker. And if they're not raving fans of Coldwell Banker, because not everybody is all the time, I get it, making sure that they are, make them raving fans. The other 20% I spend in growing the brokerage. The coaching that I do in that 80% really can be, and I try to teach this to anybody, honestly, even you as a team lead. There are 4 different categories in which you can always train someone. And whether it's the brand new agent getting into the business or the Brent Germanys of the world doing 80 to 100 million a year, there's 4 categories. The first category is mindset. And in mindset, you have 2 different subcategories. It could be, you know what, Katie, you've been really in a funk lately. You've been negative. We gotta pull you out of that. How do we get you positive? Because when you're positive, you're 37% better at sales. You're 31% more productive. So what are some exercises that you can do? Gratitude, manifestation, etc. Or then you have the flip side of that, which is, hey, you're at an inflection point in your business. You need an assistant, but you can't grapple with either A, paying for one, or B, giving up the control. And so we got to walk you down that path of from a mindset perspective, overcoming that. The second vertical is sphere of influence. Everybody says they have a database. 99% of the time they don't. They have a contact list.
I've got a ton of people on my phone, though. That doesn't.
That's what everybody says. I got it right here. I'm like, all right, cool. You ready for this? So how many people do you think you have in your database? I don't know. Right here. I'll do it with you, Katie. Can we do it?
Oh, God. This is turning into a coaching call now.
How big?
I'm nervous.
First name basis. How many people in your database know you on a first name basis?
In my database, probably 500.
Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to raise your hand. Of those 500, no Katie Day on a first name basis. All right. Lower your hand when you don't have what I ask you. Do you have everybody's first name? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You got everybody's last name?
Everybody?
Yep. Okay. Well, let keep it up. Keep it up so we can go through. Do you have everybody's home address?
Well, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Are you saying everyone in my database that
knows you on a first name basis? Your sphere of influence.
Okay.
All right.
So I was thinking in our database, some of these people don't even put in a name when they inquire about a house.
Right. No, I'm talking about people who know you.
Okay. Right. I feel better about this.
Okay. First name, last name.
Yeah.
Street address, the complete phone number for everybody now, email address, birthday. And do you follow all of the, there you go, right? So here you are, top producer. I can coach you on how to get all that information so that when you hang up the phone with your database, with your sphere of influence, people who know you on a first name basis, you'll be able to genuinely check in on them and ask them how they're doing, know whether or not you need to engage as a realtor based on what they tell you. Yeah. I always suggest doing it while you're walking, because when you're walking, you get an extra step, you get an extra kick of energy, you're more positive. So you get exercise in. I know you exercise every day, but not everybody does. And when you hang up that phone, you would have completed your database. So now you have 500 people, first name, last name, street address, city, state, zip, phone number, email, birthday, social media handle, and away we go, right? So that's one thing we can coach agents on. The third one is, well, what are you doing to add people to your database? Because people are like, I got 500. I'm going to work my 500. But here's the reality. If you worked on adding 15 people to your database every single week, that's 780 people a year. Yeah. If you did business with 1% of them, I just added 8 transactions to your deal count. If I added 8 transactions to your deal count, and what's your average sales price?
We'll say 300.
300. That's 2.4 million. That's $72,000 in GCI I just added to your thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's the third one. And the fourth one is farming, right? Everybody says they farm, and you're like, well, okay, so tell me about your farm. And they're like, the city of Southlake is my farm. And I'm like,
little broad,
you know, and then you walk them through a farm and how frequently are they following up with that farm? And you know, mindset, there's a top producer that specializes in that neighborhood, so I don't want to go after it, or I live here, so I want to do my farm area, but the numbers suck. And you know, well, why do you want to go after that farm? And then coaching them on how to go after it, whether it's door knocking, whether it's mailers, and if you're going to do mailers, how do you piggyback it with social media, you know, depending on that person's what they're open to.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I coach.
Yeah, I like it. And all of that's like, that's gold. We could just end right now and it would be perfect, tons of information. So that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I think the sphere and database and actually engaging with people, that was actually something that I was just talking to our team about today, is I think, we did a really great job at the beginning of, the shutdown and COVID, of reaching out to everyone and talking to everyone and having conversations, and then things got busy and we've kind of lost track or lost touch with that. So that was, I challenged them. I was like, who can beat me with the most amount of calls between now and the end of the year, so we'll see how it goes.
And it's a perfect time of year, listen, right now. So it's interesting. You get that a lot. I'm busy. And then you ask them what's the biggest hole in their business, and they're like, consistency.
Yeah.
And so what happens is but the reason you have these roller coasters, from what I see at least, is you get somebody who typically doesn't do a lot of deals, right? And then all of a sudden they get 3 or 4 deals under contract. And here's what they do all day. And they're just staring at their deals and they're babysitting.
Yeah.
What do I got to do now? What do I got to do now? So we got to work with them on how to get them organized so that by 10:30 in the morning, they're done with their deals, right? Like I had a system at one point. I had 16 deals under contract without an assistant. It was the biggest mistake ever, but it taught me how to get organized, and it taught me how to get those deals out of the way so that I can then focus my day on prospecting. And right now we're at the end of the year, beginning of the year is the perfect time to follow up with your sphere. So if I was coaching your team, here's what I would tell them. I'll tell them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call Katie. You're going to call everybody who's on a first name basis. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get your database together with what you have. So you're going to create a spreadsheet. You're going to give all the categories I gave you before, and only fill in people who know you on a first name basis. Fill in what you got, right? So that when you're done, without making one phone call, you're going to see all these holes in your spreadsheet. And those holes are freaking gold, man. They're gold.
Yeah.
So here's what you do. You're going to call Katie up and say, hey, Katie, how are you? Or based on when you last spoke to that person, I'm giving it to you raw and straight. You got to add your flavor and color to it. But you're genuinely going to ask that person how they're doing. That's step number 1. Their answer will let you know whether or not you need to engage as a professional, which is step number 2. So here's what I mean. If you tell me, Alex, oh my God, I'm doing great. Oh my God, I'm crazy busy. I'm going to go back and I'm going to label what you tell me, which is, damn, Katie, it sounds like you're crushing it right now with everything going on in the world. And you're like, man, God, yeah, I am crushing it. What's going on? What's happening that you're crushing it? Oh my God, I got a job promotion. I got married. I'm getting divorced. I'm so happy. I'm having a baby, whatever.
All of this all at once.
Sometimes I'm getting divorced because I'm getting married. I'm marrying my secretary, whatever. And based on that, you can then follow it up with, hey, listen, my goal was to call everybody I know by the end of the year. That's it. But it sounds like you may actually need my help as a realtor. How can I help you?
Yeah.
That's the second thing. Then if you're doing it while you're walking and you can take notes in your phone, that's the third. And then the fourth one is when we go to hang up, say, hey, Katie, by the way, one of the things I love about Coldwell Banker is we're giving away like Amazon gift cards, like it's going out of business. And I realized I want to give one. I want you to be in the running. I don't got your info. I don't have your phone number. And then just get it. I don't have your phone number. I don't have your home address. I don't have your email or whatever. Yeah. And then you hang up the phone. And then you've checked off all 4 things. So
have you ever heard of Postable?
No.
So it's Postable. And it's this online thing where you can have people put in their information and then it prompts them, I think, either quarterly or maybe annually to update their info. So it's something I recently started using both professionally and personally, and it's been super helpful because it separates it from my CRM. So now I have everyone's birthdays, I have everyone's info, their addresses, their partner, spouse's name, anniversaries, and you can put in whatever info you want.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you on that, though. Okay, I think that's great. I would actually tell you that they shouldn't do that.
I've put people into it.
Oh, okay. So yeah. And then it reconfirm. Okay, because I can see some realtors. Let's call it. Some realtors are lazy, and if they can avoid the phone call, they'll avoid it, right? So they may send that link to their database to fill in and get the information rather than making the call themselves. And the money's in the call.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, 100%, 1,000%.
Anyways, Want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. No, that's but it's cool because it's like it can send out cards too and things like that. So I'm a fan.
All right, cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, good deal. Cool. So what advice would you give to someone that's, I guess I have two things. So like someone that's just starting out and like what advice you would give. And then obviously we are coming up to the end of the year. We're starting a new year. What advice would you give to people to start 2021 strong? And it may actually be the same, honestly.
It's the same basics, right? Get your mind right, because at the end of the day, you could be the best listing agent, you could be the best buyer's agent, you could be the best prospector, whatever. None of that matters if you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. So make sure you have a plan in place to get your mind right. Get your database together and work it, and have a farm area and actually work it, right? Come hell or high water, there are certain non-negotiables that you need to have in your business. And one of those is always be prospecting, because if you're not, then you're going to have the cyclical nature.
Yeah. Cool. What's one fun fact about you that most people don't know? You can talk about the medals behind you for your sales.
I'm pretty open, man. I have 4 boys, 23, 13, and 10-year-old twins. These medals are my triathlon medals. So they start triathlon and half marathon, but mainly triathlon. Let me make sure I'm doing this right up here. Okay, so these 2 are my half Ironmans. Then they go into Olympic distance. So those are like 5.5 hour races. Then the Olympic distance are like 2.5. Then I have a couple 3 half marathons, and then sprints and all that stuff. I have those up there because I think I think maybe would be a good way to. Not sure when you want to end it, because I know we're running longer than you typically do. But I think that there are 4 things that make anybody who's successful. I think because of my podcast, I've been able to boil it down to 4 things, right? The first one, it's all your fault. So everything great in your life, everything bad in your life, it's your fault. Because when it's your fault, not only can you take the credit for it, but you can also take the responsibility for it and make a change. As long as I'm continuing to blame Katie for something, or COVID for something, or this or that, it's out of my control and I can't do anything about it. I'm at your mercy. When I take responsibility for it, I can actually make a change. The second one is the environment. Like, what kind of environment are you in? Are you in an environment that motivates you, pushes you, and makes you want to excel? Third one is, what's your inner motivation? You need to have something that's bigger than you to want to get you out of bed in the morning when you're in that down spot. And the fourth one is a how. You need a plan. You're not going to just wake up and sell $20 million a year worth of real estate. You need to have a plan in place. And I have these medals as a metaphor for that, because you don't wake up and do a half Ironman.
You should.
Well, yeah, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and you're swimming 1.2 miles, biking 56 miles, running 13.1, and so there's a lot of training that goes into that, right? How do you swim? What happens if you get a toe cramp when you're swimming? And it happens. What happens if somebody kicks your goggle in the?
Oh yeah, that's
this, right? Of people jumping in the water. What happens if you have a nervous breakdown? You hyperventilate in the water. What happens if you blow a tire on the bike? When you're running and you have a bad run, whatever. It's the same thing. When those situations arise in a race, you've put in the time, right? You have a plan. Same thing in real estate. You got to have a plan. You got to put in the time. You got to practice. So that's why I have those medals in.
Good deal. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today. I know you have a very busy schedule. If people want to connect with you online, how can they find you on social?
Instagram at Vidal Alex, like Vidal Sassoon. No relation though. I wish. At Vidal Alex. Facebook, Alex Vidal podcast. All the views are on Facebook. So if you go to my YouTube channel, which is thecloserclub.com, thecloserclub.com, you can see all 122 episodes. There's not a lot of views there because they're all on Facebook, but that's a great placeholder for it. And that's it.
Cool. Well, again, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It's always fun to catch up. And hopefully I'll have a few more workouts to throw your way here.
Absolutely. Hold on. So are we going to stay on after you press the stop record button?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I want to
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pivot. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and follow Katie on social media at MoveMe2TX to stay up to date in all things real estate.